She trusted him with her heart and her life's work. But when Adira Lawson uncovered the truth, love turned into a weapon. Betrayed by the man she built her future with, she strikes back in a storm of revenge, only to find that the real enemy was closer than she ever imagined. In this gripping tale of deception, ambition, and redemption, discover how one woman rises from heartbreak to power and learns that victory sometimes comes at the price of forgiveness. The rain had not stopped for 3 days. It slid down the tall glass windows of Adira Lawson's penthouse like streaks of forgotten tears, tracing lines that blurred the city's glowing skyline. The storm outside mirrored the silence inside, heavy, restless, and waiting to break. Adira stood barefoot near the window, holding a half-empty glass of red wine. Her reflection stared back at her, tired eyes, smudged mascara, and the faint shimmer of what used to be hope. She had once loved this city for its rhythm, its noise, its promise that anything was possible. But tonight, New York felt like a cage built of memories she couldn't escape. Her phone buzzed on the marble counter, a single message lighting up the screen. "We need to talk. Please, Adira. Just once."
Ethan.
Her heart clenched. She didn't have to read it twice. His name alone was enough to send a chill through her, not from longing, but from the memory of what he'd taken from her. Ethan Cole, the man who had promised her forever, only to shatter it in silence. Adira set the glass down, her fingers trembling as she exhaled slowly. She deleted his number a dozen times, blocked him on everything that mattered, but somehow his words always found a way back. That was Ethan, persistent, persuasive, and perfectly aware of how to twist remorse into a weapon. The apartment was dim except for the soft light of the city bleeding through the window blinds. She walked toward the piano in the corner, untouched for months, and brushed her fingers across the keys. Once, Ethan had loved hearing her play. He said her music felt like home. Now it felt like betrayal wrapped in melody. A soft knock at the door startled her. 3 taps, spaced perfectly apart. Her breath caught. No one came here without calling first. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice sharper than she intended. "It's me," came the reply, deep, familiar, and threaded with hesitation. "Ethan." She froze, every muscle tightening. He was here. Her mind flooded with flashes. The last fight, the lies, the late-night phone call that exposed everything he'd hidden. The betrayal wasn't just romantic. It had been business, too. Ethan had used her, her designs, her ideas, her trust, to build a company she'd dreamed of together, then stripped her out of it like she never existed. Now, standing at her door, he wanted to talk. Adira's hand hovered over the handle. For a moment, she considered walking away. Let him stand there in the storm, the way he'd left her standing in the ruins of everything she'd built. But a quiet voice inside her whispered, "You need answers before you can let go." She unlocked the door. Ethan stood drenched in the hallway, water dripping from his black coat. His hair was plastered against his forehead, his expression somewhere between regret and desperation. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. Adira's silence stretched like a blade between them.
5 minutes, she said at last.
"Then you leave." He stepped inside. The scent of rain and cologne filled the space, mixing with the faint aroma of her half-burned candle. He looked around, eyes lingering on the piano, the open wine bottle, the scattered sketches on her desk, traces of a life he once shared, now turned foreign. "I know you don't want to see me," he began, voice low. "But I needed to." "Don't," Adira interrupted. "Don't say you needed to explain. You already did when you signed my work under your name." Ethan flinched. "It wasn't like that." She laughed, a hollow, trembling sound. "Then tell me how it was, Ethan. Because I remember handing you the designs for the Eclipse collection and believing we were partners. I remember staying up for weeks while you handled investors. And then suddenly, I was watching you on a magazine cover, calling it your creation." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing slowly. "I made mistakes. I thought if I could just make the company stable, we have time to fix things." "Fix things?" Her voice rose, cracking with emotion. You sold me out, Ethan. You used me to climb higher. You didn't just take my work, you took my name. Silence. The storm outside cracked like applause for her fury. Ethan looked up, eyes glassy. I didn't want to lose you. You already did. For a moment, they just stood there. The woman he destroyed and the man who still believed he could be forgiven. He moved closer. Adira, I still love you. Her breath hitched. The words carried weight, but they no longer pierced. They felt like echoes from a language she no longer spoke. Love, she whispered. You don't get to use that word. Not after everything. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away sharply. You wanted to see me, you've seen me, now leave. But he didn't move. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and placed a small velvet box on the counter. Before you throw this away, just open it. Adira stared at it, suspicious, uneasy. Slowly, she lifted the lid. Inside was a silver pendant, a locket shaped like a crescent moon. Her pulse quickened. It was identical to the one her mother used to wear, the one stolen years ago during a break-in that was never solved. Her gaze shot up to Ethan. Where did you get this? His expression darkened. That's what I came to tell you. She felt her chest tighten. Ethan, what did you do? He swallowed hard. There's something you don't know about your mother, and about why I met you in the first place. The words hit her like ice water. What are you talking about? She whispered. Ethan looked at her with haunted eyes. It wasn't an accident that we met, Adira. I was told to find you. The room tilted. Her hand tightened around the locket as thunder cracked outside. Told? By who? He hesitated, then said softly, by someone who's been watching you for years. Adira stepped back, her heart racing. You're lying. I wish I were. Before she could speak again, the lights flickered, once, twice, then went out completely. The apartment plunged into darkness. Outside, lightning illuminated the glass walls for a heartbeat, and in that flash, Adira saw something behind Ethan. A shadow. Someone else was in the room. Lightning carved a jagged scar across the sky, and for that single blinding instant, Adira Lawson saw a second figure standing in the far corner of the room, tall, motionless, half hidden in the darkness near the hallway. Her voice caught in her throat. Ethan, someone's here. He turned sharply, eyes wide. What are you talking about? Another flash, and the shadow was gone. The apartment fell into absolute darkness except for the dull blue pulse of the city bleeding through the glass. Rain hammered against the windows, muffling the sound of her quickening breath. Adira reached for her phone on the counter, but it slipped from her damp hands and clattered to the floor. When she bent to pick it up, a soft click echoed, the faint metallic sound of a door closing somewhere inside the penthouse. Ethan's voice was low. Stay behind me. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of trusting him again, but fear muted everything. They moved toward the hallway together, every step careful, every sound amplified. The scent of rain mixed with something faintly metallic, gun oil, maybe, something that didn't belong in her home. A light flickered to life in the kitchen. Someone had turned on the small under-cabinet lamp. Adira's pulse pounded in her ears. Who's there? She called, forcing her voice not to shake. Silence. Ethan edged forward and glanced around the doorway. When he looked back, his face had gone pale. It's open, he whispered. The service entrance. That door is always locked. He didn't answer. He stepped closer to inspect, and that was when Adira noticed the puddle on the floor, muddy footprints trailing from the service door toward the kitchen island. Whoever had been inside hadn't left yet. She grabbed the nearest thing she could find, a heavy glass vase, and tightened her grip. Ethan reached for her wrist. Adira, listen to me. Whoever's doing this. Doing what, Ethan? Her voice cracked under pressure. Breaking into my home? Leaving me a stolen locket that belonged to my mother? You need to start explaining now. He hesitated, then said quietly, Your mother's not who you think she was. The words were almost drowned by the thunder outside, but they tore through her all the same. What are you talking about? She worked for a private foundation. They funded art exhibitions, charities, restoration projects. But that was only the surface. Underneath, They laundered money through fake art sales. I was approached by one of their people 2 years ago. Adira felt the floor tilt again. You're lying. I wish I were, he said, voice raw. They wanted me to get close to you, to find something your mother left behind. A key, Adira. A key that opens a safe deposit box under her maiden name. She stared at him, shaking her head. You expect me to believe you dated me because someone paid you to? I didn't know it was you at first, he said. I was told to approach a designer named Adira Lawson. Nothing more. Then I met you, and… Stop, she snapped. You don't get to dress up betrayal as fate. The under-cabinet light flickered again. This time, a faint shadow crossed the wall behind Ethan. Adira's breath froze. Behind you? He turned, just as the kitchen light died completely. A muffled thud followed, something heavy striking flesh. Ethan staggered, grabbing his shoulder. A dark figure lunged from the shadows and knocked him against the counter. The vase shattered as Adira swung blindly, but the stranger caught her wrist midair. Don't scream, a low, controlled voice ordered. It wasn't angry. It was calculated, almost professional. The intruder was dressed in black, a hood shadowing his face. Adira could barely see his eyes, but there was something chillingly calm in them. Ethan groaned on the floor, clutching his arm. Leave her out of this, he gasped. The stranger turned slightly toward him. You should have stayed away, Mr. Cole. Then, to Adira. You need to come with me.
Now.
She yanked her wrist free. Who are you? You'll find out soon enough. He stepped closer, but before he could reach her, red and blue lights flashed across the apartment walls. Sirens wailed faintly below. Someone in the building must have reported the power outage or the noise. The stranger paused, assessing the situation. You're not safe here, he said quickly. They're already watching you. If you stay, they'll find you before dawn. Who will? She demanded. The same people your mother ran from. And then he was gone, slipping through the service door as quietly as he'd come. Adira dropped to her knees beside Ethan, who was breathing heavily, a thin line of blood trailing down his arm. Ethan, she whispered. Tell me the truth. All of it. He opened his mouth to speak, but another sound cut him off, a soft chime from her phone, still on the floor where she'd dropped it earlier. A new message appeared on the screen. You shouldn't have opened the locket. The air around her seemed to vanish. Ethan's eyes widened when he saw it. Adira, he said weakly, whoever sent that, they're not going to stop. Outside, the rain slowed to a whisper. The city lights shimmered on the wet glass like 1,000 watching eyes. Adira stared at the message, heart pounding, and knew that everything she thought she understood about her past, about her mother, about Ethan, about herself, had just been rewritten. The locket gleamed faintly in her trembling hand, the crescent shape catching the city's glow. She turned it over once more and noticed, for the first time, a tiny engraving along its edge, letters so small she'd missed them before. 3 initials. Yemel. Her mother's? Or someone else's? Before she could trace them with her thumb, the phone buzzed again. Next time, don't ignore the knock. Adira's breath caught. There had only been one knock tonight. But she was no longer sure who had made it first. The city hadn't yet woken when Adira Lawson opened her eyes. A faint gray dawn bled through the curtains, painting the penthouse in cold light. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavier than before, the kind of quiet that made every heartbeat sound like a confession. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling. The night before played in fragments. Ethan's arrival, the shadow in her apartment, the message on her phone. You shouldn't have opened the locket. Her hand drifted to the nightstand where the small silver crescent lay. Its cold surface glimmered faintly in the morning light. The engraving, Yemel, stared back at her like a question she couldn't yet answer. Across the room, Ethan stirred on the couch. He had insisted on staying after she patched up his shoulder. The wound wasn't deep, but it was enough to make him weak. His coat, still damp from the storm, hung on the chair. Adira sat up quietly, her mind a whirlwind of unease. She didn't trust him. Not yet. But for now, he was the only person who might know what was happening. Morning. Ethan said hoarsely, sitting up. His eyes were ringed with fatigue, the sharp edges of his usual confidence replaced with something almost human: regret. "You should see a doctor," she said flatly. "I've had worse." Adira crossed her arms. "You're not staying here." He nodded slowly. "I figured you'd say that." "Then why are you still here?" He looked down at his bandaged arm. "Because the people who broke in last night won't stop. And because, whether you believe me or not, Adira, I'm trying to keep you alive." Her laugh was cold. "Alive? You already killed the part of me that trusted you." Ethan didn't argue. He stood, wincing slightly, and moved toward the counter where the locket sat. He hesitated before touching it. "That message you got, you shouldn't have opened it. Do you know what it means?" She shook her head.
No.
"But I'm guessing you do." He exhaled. "The locket isn't just jewelry. It's a data key." Adira blinked. "A what?" "It's not metal. At least not entirely. Inside, there's a microchip sealed between two silver plates. The engraving, YML, is a code identifier. Your mother, Eliza Monroe Lawson, used it as a cipher signature." Adira stepped closer, disbelief etched across her face. "You're saying my mother, a museum curator, was part of some criminal network?" "She wasn't a criminal," Ethan said quietly. "She was trying to expose one." Her pulse quickened. "Explain." "She was gathering evidence, ledgers, offshore records, encrypted transactions, proof that the foundation she worked for was laundering money through stolen art. She encoded everything on that microchip. But before she could turn it in, she disappeared." Adira's voice dropped to a whisper. "She didn't disappear. She died. The police said it was an accident." Ethan met her eyes. "Accidents can be arranged." The words hung between them, cold and heavy. Adira's throat tightened. She turned away, pressing her palms against the counter. "If what you're saying is true, why now? Why come back after everything you did?" "Because the people who were watching her, they never stopped. And now, they're watching you." She turned sharply. "Why me?" "Because they think the chip wasn't destroyed." Adira's gaze drifted to the locket again. "And you think it's inside that?" "I don't think," he said. "I know." She hesitated, then picked it up. It felt heavier than before, as if it carried the weight of her mother's silence. She pressed the small latch, and the locket clicked open. Inside was a tiny compartment no bigger than a grain of rice, and within it, something gleamed. Ethan leaned closer. "That's it. The drive." Adira stared at it. "If this is evidence, why not take it to the police?" "Because the police commissioner's name is on one of those ledgers," Ethan replied bitterly. "They'll bury it before you make it to the door." Adira felt a wave of nausea rise. The city outside, once a place of opportunity, now felt like a chessboard, and she was a piece being moved without consent. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We find someone who can decrypt it." "Someone you trust?" He hesitated. "Someone we can't afford to trust, but we don't have another choice." Adira frowned. "Who?" "A man named Julian Cross. Ex-cybersecurity specialist. He used to work for the same foundation before he vanished with half their files. If anyone can unlock that drive, it's him." Her instincts screamed no. "Sounds like a trap." "Everything about this is a trap," Ethan said. "But if we don't act first, they'll come for you again." She wanted to argue, but deep down she knew he was right. Last night's intruder hadn't been random. He'd known about the locket, about her mother. And whoever he worked for wouldn't stop until the truth was buried forever. "Where is he?" she asked finally. "Brooklyn. Old Waterfront District. He runs a repair shop as a front." Adira grabbed her coat. "Then we go now." Ethan blinked.
Now.
"It's daylight," she said firmly. "They won't expect us to move this fast." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "All right. But we go quietly." As they stepped into the elevator, Adira's heart thudded hard. The locket hung around her neck again, hidden under her shirt, warm against her skin. She didn't know what waited for her on the other side of this, redemption or destruction, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She wasn't going to run anymore. They drove through Lower Manhattan in silence. The storm had washed the streets clean, leaving behind puddles that reflected the steel-gray sky. Adira watched the city pass by, the same city that had once been her dream, now a labyrinth of secrets. Ethan finally broke the silence. You know, the night I took credit for your designs, it wasn't because I wanted to steal from you. Don't, she said sharply. You don't get to rewrite that. I'm not, he said quietly. I'm just saying, I was desperate. They threatened to expose my connection to your mother. I thought if I kept them happy, they'd leave you alone. Adira's grip tightened on the steering wheel. So you sold my life's work to protect me? I sold my soul, he said, voice low. It's not the same thing. She didn't answer. The road ahead blurred with light rain. In the reflection of the windshield, she caught a glimpse of Ethan watching her, not with guilt this time, but something closer to sorrow. When they reached the waterfront, the city's noise faded into the quiet hum of machinery and gulls. Warehouses loomed over cracked pavement. Ethan pointed to a narrow alley where a small sign read Cross Electronics. That's him, he said. Adira parked the car, her nerves tightening with every step. The door was half open, a faint flicker of light visible inside. They stepped in. The shop smelled of old metal, solder, and secrets. A man in his 40s sat at a cluttered workbench, soldering something delicate. He didn't look up. You shouldn't be here. Julian Cross? Ethan asked. The man sighed and set down his tool. When he turned, Adira felt a jolt of recognition. Something in his eyes, calm but calculating, reminded her of the stranger from last night. I was wondering when you'd show up, Julian said. You brought it, didn't you? Adira froze. Brought what? Julian smiled faintly. The locket. The night air in Manhattan shimmered with the faint hum of rain, that soft, rhythmic tapping that makes memories louder. Adira stood on the rooftop of her apartment building, the skyline stretching endlessly before her, glittering and cold. Behind her, the city pulsed, taxis honking, laughter echoing from bars, and distant thunder rolling like a warning. She wrapped her coat tighter, but it wasn't the wind that made her shiver. It was the thought of what tomorrow could bring. She replayed the last 48 hours like a film she couldn't pause. Ethan's confession. The secret recordings. The boardroom explosion had left her career and heart hanging by a thread. But beneath it all, a quiet fire had begun to burn. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like running. She felt like fighting. The elevator doors clanged open behind her. Ethan stepped out, rain dripping from his hair, his expression raw and uncertain. Adira, she didn't turn around. You shouldn't be here. I had to see you, he said, stepping closer. After everything that happened at the firm, after what I did, I couldn't just disappear. Her voice was calm, too calm. You mean the part where you handed over our project to Marcus in exchange for your promotion? Or the part where you told me you loved me while deleting my name from the patent file? Ethan's shoulders slumped. You think I didn't regret it? Marcus threatened me. He said he'd destroy both of us if I didn't play along. Don't make excuses. Adira turned, her eyes sharp. You made your choice. He stepped closer, desperate. Then let me fix it. I've gathered proof, emails, transfer logs. I can expose Marcus for what he did. Adira studied him, her heartbeat steady but cold. You're late. I already have everything I need. For a moment, silence stretched between them, the kind that feels like the calm before a storm. You're going to take him down? Ethan asked quietly. I'm not just taking him down, she replied. I'm taking back everything he stole from me. The next morning, the world moved like slow motion. Adira walked into Lawson and Kearns, the glass doors sliding open with a hiss. Her reflection on the lobby floor looked like a stranger, calm, poised, untouchable. Inside, whispers followed her. Employees glancing up, sensing something electric in the air. Marcus sat in the conference room, surrounded by board members. His smug confidence was still intact, but his eyes flickered when he saw her. Adira, he said, forcing a smile. I didn't expect you back so soon. You should have, she replied coolly. You made the mistake of underestimating me. She dropped a thick folder onto the table. Financial reports, email correspondence, proof of fraudulent account transfers. Marcus's face paled. Where did you get this? Adira leaned forward. You left a trail, even you couldn't erase. I just followed it. The board members exchanged wary glances. Ethan, standing near the back, avoided her gaze. Marcus's voice cracked. You think they'll believe you over me? I built this company. No, Marcus, she said. You built an empire of lies. And I'm tearing it down. By afternoon, the office was in chaos. News had spread. Marcus Kearns was under investigation for corporate fraud and data theft. Reporters swarmed outside, and whispers of scandal rippled through the company. Adira walked out of the building quietly, her heels clicking against marble, each step a declaration. She didn't smile, not yet. Revenge, she realized, wasn't about satisfaction. It was about closure. Ethan caught up to her at the entrance. You did it, he said softly. She turned. No, we didn't. I did. He flinched at the distance in her tone. Adira, I never wanted to hurt you. I don't. She raised a hand. You already did. But I hope you find peace with it. He swallowed hard. What about us? She looked at him for a long moment, eyes reflecting the gray sky. There is no us. Not anymore. And with that, she stepped into the rain, disappearing into the crowd. Hours later, she sat by the window of a quiet cafe near Central Park, a cup of coffee warming her hands. She watched the city blur, headlights streaking like ghosts, people rushing through puddles, umbrellas colliding. For the first time in months, she felt still. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. You think it's over? You just opened the first door. Her stomach tightened. The sender's name appeared as anonymous. She frowned, scrolling down. Attached was a single image, the blueprint of the project she thought she'd secured. But this one had a different name on the patent. Yell Industries, Ethan's initials. Adira's breath caught. She replayed every word he'd said, every apology. He had looked broken, but maybe that was part of the act. The rain outside turned heavier, pounding against the glass like a warning. Adira's expression hardened, her mind already racing ahead. This isn't over, she whispered. She stood, leaving a few bills on the counter, and walked into the storm, her reflection vanishing into the city lights, just as thunder cracked across the skyline. The rain had slowed by the time Adira reached her apartment. The city lights shimmered through the glass like reflections of old memories, some broken, some burning brighter than ever. She tossed her coat over the chair and stared at the phone in her hand. Yell Industries. Ethan's initials. Her pulse quickened. No, she whispered. He wouldn't. But deep inside, she knew the look in his eyes, the one that always hovered between guilt and ambition. She had once mistaken it for love. Adira opened her laptop, pulling up the secured project files. Her fingers flew across the keys, each click echoing her heartbeat. Within seconds, she accessed the patent database. And there it was, filed under Ethan Lang and Associates. The same technology she had created, her vision, her work, her soul, was stolen again. She sat back slowly, exhaling. The betrayal didn't sting this time. It just solidified something inside her. A cold, calm fire. Moments later, she was in her car, driving through the slick streets of Manhattan. The rain reflected in streaks of gold and silver across the windshield, blurring the world into motion. She didn't call Ethan.
She didn't text.
She already knew where he'd be. The penthouse lights on 54th and Madison glowed faintly through the mist. She entered the lobby, her heels clicking with quiet determination. The security guard didn't stop her. Maybe it was the confidence in her eyes, or maybe fate had decided it was time. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, Ethan was standing there, startled, disheveled, a glass of whiskey trembling in his hand. Adira, his voice cracked. You shouldn't be here. She walked in slowly, each step deliberate. Funny. That's exactly what I told you on the rooftop. Ethan swallowed hard. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. She placed her phone on the table and played the recording, his conversation with Marcus, the one she'd retrieved from the company's server earlier that day. Marcus. If she finds out, we're both finished. Ethan, she won't. By the time she sees the papers, it'll all be under my name. The recording ended. Silence fell. Heavy, suffocating, real. Adira's eyes glistened, but not from tears. You said Marcus threatened you. You said you were protecting me, but you were just protecting yourself. He dropped the glass. It shattered across the marble floor. I was desperate, Adira. I lost everything. I thought if I had one win. You chose your win over my trust, she cut in. Over us. Ethan took a trembling step toward her. Please, I can fix this. We can still. No, she said softly, her voice steady as steel. You can't fix what you never valued. She pulled a small flash drive from her pocket and placed it on the counter. These are your files, your real ones. The rest, she said, turning toward the door, are already sent to the Federal Bureau. You won't be building anything new for a long time. His eyes widened in shock. You reported me? Adira paused at the doorway.
No, Ethan.
You reported yourself. I just hit send. When she stepped out onto the street again, the rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking, faint streaks of dawn painting the horizon in muted gold. She breathed in deeply, letting the cold air fill her lungs. For the first time in years, she didn't feel broken. Her phone buzzed once more, a message from an unknown number. But this time, it wasn't a threat. It was a single line. Congratulations, Ms. Lawson. You've been approved for your own research grant. New beginnings await. She stared at the message, a small, genuine smile forming on her lips. Maybe life had taken her through storms just to teach her how to stand in the rain. Adira turned toward the sunrise, the city awakening around her. The same city that had once devoured her dreams, now reflecting her strength. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement, echoing through the morning stillness, not as a sound of revenge anymore, but of victory. And as the first light touched her face, she whispered, almost to herself, finally, it's over.